Good evening.
Everywhere I go on this island, it seems to me I find degeneracy.
Watch a few movies, take a few notes. See, it's a lot scarier when there's no motive, Sid.
We have a bargain.
Watch a few movies, take a few notes.
Do you feel the pain? Oh, it's the pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite.
Watch a few movies, take a few notes.
His entire work consists of violence, all the time, obsessed with the issue of violence. Mayhem, gouging out of eyes, autopsies on the stage.
Cop, it is time to keep your appointment.
Good evening, chat. Welcome to Double Feature Horror Show episode 159. You know what we want. Likes smashed, throats slashed, Borderlands trashed. That's what we want. That's what we're going for. I hope you're well this week. Hey, everybody. All the regulars are in. I'm glad to see it. Hey, Patrick Mappin, John Goris, Maverick, good to see you. Thurman Trees. I don't know if I thanked you for becoming a member. I saw that had happened some point in the last week, or joined or rejoined, but either way, thank you very much. I hope you're enjoying the exclusive content library. Hello, Dr. Prepper. And, of course, my co-host, Murgoot. How you doing, Murgoot?
Getting over COVID.
Yeah, we are both, guys, I'm going to be honest, we're both a little bit dead. We need the stream to liven us up, but it has been, oh, hey, wifey, good to see you. Let me tell you, very appropriately, I am very sleep deprived because, like Victor Frankenstein, I created a monster, and that little monster has been keeping us up pretty darn late all week. So we are going to be very efficient. Let's say quickly, Patrick Batman is saying, did I get your list of horror shorts? I believe I did, but I saw your comment about them being deleted. Let me have a quick check. I'll see if I've got it for you. Yes, I have. If it starts stalled, my house walkthrough, the chair remote viewing. Yep, I've got it. And I also have a huge amount of sympathy for you having your comments deleted. Pain in the backside, folks. Well, we're going to be very efficient, folks. We do not have TCG tonight. He is off doing his own thing. He's on holiday. So if you know his address, get in there, guys. Just kidding. Sleep deprivation. It's all good. Quickly going through it. We're on YouTube, so, likes are very much appreciated. You just sort of plop that like in the jar like it was an eyeball you purchased from a charnel house. Spread the good word to anyone who you think might appreciate the UK's coziest horror stream and or has a particular interest in Hammer horror, which we are going to be covering in this arc. And if you want to go a little further than that, you can, of course, support the channel via Super Chats or, ideally, memberships either here or on Subscribestar. And the links for all that are in the description. And one other thing in the description is Murgoot's Twitter. How smooth was that? What a segue.
It's at Murgoot. Science posting, humor, geopolitics. I haven't been live much this past week as somehow I managed to get the coof of all things, and it leveled me. So, not much has been able to hold my attention, especially not the cesspit that's Twitter. Yeah.
Well, you're an absolute trooper for rocking up tonight. You really are. Did you? I didn't check. Did you manage to watch the music videos?
Oh yeah.
Okay, sweet, sweet. Well, in that case, folks, we're going to do a topic. We're going to continue ranking horror-themed music videos because that was a heck of a lot more fun than any of us predicted. We actually missed a few last week, so we're going to get back to those. Then we'll talk about classic Hammer horror, The Curse of Frankenstein from 1957. And we've done the shilling. So, the only other thing I've got to do is the horror homework. And that's a little complex. That's a little complicated. We actually have next week off. But for the choice, I'm going to give you a choice, chat. I want to hear from you where you want us to go. We're going to do more of the classic big brands of horror that Hammer put out, ones where it got a whole load of sequels. But I want to give you the option. So if you prefer to see something where Christopher Lee gets a bit more to do, we can go with a Hammer Dracula. And if you want, if you would prefer something like a more refined version of The Curse of Frankenstein, then we can go with The Mummy. So I'll be watching chat. I'll be seeing how you're going with it. Maybe we'll do a poll at the end. All right. But you've got the choice. So we'll do The Mummy or we'll do Dracula. And then in the classic Hammer, we're going to branch out a little bit beyond that. But that is advance warning that you get to decide the horror homework. With that said, I will now move us onto our topic, which is ranking. How are we doing? Super efficient. Super efficient. Ranking our... I might make that a bit bigger for you guys. There we go. We're going to be ranking horror-themed music videos. So this is one we did talk about, but we never actually ranked. It's Skinny Puppy Warlock. We discussed it. I think we're a bit split on it, Murgoot, because Warlock is really, it's just a montage, a mashup of scenes from a whole variety of 80s gore movies. Sorry, 80s and 70s. It was understandably censored. I believe that's the story, isn't it, Murgoot?
Oh, yeah. It had to be... They slapped the rated X on it for the full video version for a reason. The one that they show on YouTube is slightly edited. But it's a classic of the industrial genre. It's for those fans of industrial, Skinny Puppy Rabies, the album that Warlock comes from, was highly anticipated. I bought it the first week it was out. And when the video for Warlock came out, the only place that would show it, MTV wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Much Music wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. The only place you could see the video was on a midnight on Saturday on Teletoons, which was a local access show that was on our local public broadcasting service channel, PBS. And they got away with it because it was after midnight and they may have 200 viewers on any given.
And those viewers got an eyeful. I mean, it is just an endless montage of all the gore shots, basically.
Well, between the gore shots and the Charles Manson samples, the police used to watch over the people. Now they're watching the people. And then Charles Manson singing the Beatles' Helter Skelter. that pissed a lot of people off. But I consider it S tier because it's one of the best examples of what the industrial genre was trying to do at that time. Shock people into thinking.
I tend to rank it a little bit lower. Like, give me an appreciation of it. Like, it's not exactly my type of music. I found it really distracting because I'm watching that video and all I was trying to do was place the horror film, and it just completely distracted me. I'll be led by chat. Chat, do you agree? S tier? What do you reckon? I'll let it go. We should, of course, mention while we're waiting for chat to get their votes in that of Skinny Puppy, the guy Ogre, we saw him. We saw him in a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, Nivik Ogre shows up in a lot of places, especially when there's music involved. Kevin Key and Nivik Ogre are very interesting chaps. They'd show up as guest musicians with Ministry, with KMFDM, 9 Inch Nails.
We like a little bit of Ministry around here. Nice.
Yeah.
Of course, for people wondering, the film we're talking about is Repo the Genetic Opera, which you can see a bunker stream of on this channel as a special treat for people. Chat is shy. All right, Murgoot, as you fought through COVID and the coof to be here, should I have even said COVID? As I predicted, we did. We were not advertiser friendly on last week's Suspiria stream. May have been a thing or two that we said or showed. Never mind. Treat for you. It's going up on the S tier. If only for subversive Charles Manson quotations. All right. The other one that we missed was from last week was Motorhead's Hellraiser.
Yeah, this one is interesting. The song itself is great. Lemmy Kilmister of Motorhead wrote the song for Ozzy Osbourne. He put it out on his No More Tears, and then he asked Ozzy if he could put it out on his album too, since he's the songwriter for it. And Ozzy said, sure. And the director of Hellraiser 3 wanted the song, but he chose Motorhead's version of it. And the song is a lot of fun. It suits Motorhead to a T. It's Lemmy Kilmister. But it's basically a 5-minute advertisement for the hot garbage that was Hellraiser 3.
Yeah, I try and make a case for it, but it's a weird movie. I think we need to do a return to Hellraiser at some point because I love 2. 3 is a mess.
The one good thing about this video was Lemmy and Pinhead playing poker, and Pinhead dropping the Ace of Spades, which is, of course, the title of Motorhead's most famous hit song. And then Lemmy dropping the Joker and then throwing the table. That was the most amusing part of the entire video.
Maybe it's a lot more tongue-in-cheek than I read it, because I liked the song, but it was they also obviously went to the effort of getting Doug Bradley in to be Pinhead. But, oh, man, I got a bit of feedback there.
Yeah.
I just found, maybe I'm just the wrong audience for it, but the kind of like macho face off of Lemmy versus Pinhead and Lemmy coming out on top, it didn't quite work for me, you know.
Oh, it's cheesy all the way down the line, but it's a lot of fun, especially for Motorhead and especially for Lemmy fans.
Yeah.
Lemmy is a pure gentleman, even if he was completely wasted at any given time. Pure gentleman, icon of the metal genre.
Yeah. So we should stress, so the format is basically a concert interspersed with footage from Hellraiser 3.
And original footage of
yeah.
concert goer being tortured into becoming a Cenobite.
Yes. And then, of course, the Lemmy Pinhead face-off. It's higher effort than it might have been, but they're awkward brands to kind of squish together. Oh, also, hey Baldwin, good to see you, man. I also saw that Patrick Batman said wouldn't have gone S tier on the old Skinny Puppy. He's made the same complaint I have, basically, that the lack of narrative. But Murgoot, you argued well for it. For this one, though, I find it a slightly awkward match. I would lean towards a B or a C.
I'm giving it a C just because it's a cheesy 5-minute commercial for hot garbage.
Yeah, excellent.
The song is great. The cheese factor elevates it to a C just because it's so self-aware.
Yeah, I suppose as long as it's not taking itself too seriously, I can be a bit more lenient with it. Okay. Where to go next on this one? I feel we've gone for an S. Let's take a gamble on this. How would you feel? I mean, I think I've got a guess. How would you feel about? And I do have to check the title again. How do you feel about zombies driving this road until death sets you free? A tribute to John Carpenter, who was still alive, it must be said.
Oh, this is classic.
Yeah.
It's the sequel done in stop motion with G.I. Joe figurines is just, it's the music I couldn't really get into, but they did so well with the stop motion. And I have to say the sequel to The Thing, or requel of The Thing, is better than the 2012 sequel.
Yes. Well, prequel, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that thing is a tragedy. That really, it's such a good idea. You think it's the remake, and then they had to bungle it.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a feeling it's worth a rewatch to dissect why it didn't work, but I mustn't get dragged away because I think this is much more charming.
Oh yeah, this is classic. The guys who came up with this deserve a medal for it. Just getting the old classic G.I. Joe action figures and doing stop motion animation of The Thing was just, I loved it.
It must also be said, it looks blue good. Do I have it up there? There you go. This is a frame from it. I just thought, that looks lovely. That's well put together. It's really well lit. It's really well focused. Whilst there is kind of like a janky element to it, it looks good.
It looks good. It's stop motion, so of course it's going to be janky, and it is over the top.
Well, yeah, the G.I. Joe as well. It's kind of telling you, hey, don't take us seriously. But they give the game away here. This looks gorgeous. This was a lovely shot. Yeah, so I was very impressed with this. Something about stop motion, man. It's producing these great music videos.
Patrick Batman, Zombie did an entire John Carpenter cover album. have to look into it, find more of their music, and see what they did with it.
Yeah. On the music itself, you weren't a big fan of it. I thought I could code to this. I'd like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice focus music. I would definitely listen to that. It got a laugh out of me. The impaling with the American flag.
Yeah.
I saved that. That just cracked me up. That was great. This is a really solid one. I'm mindful of our half-hour cutoff on this one. But yeah, this was genius. Alongside Pingu Does a Thing, or Thingu.
Yeah.
It's this story works really well in stop motion.
Yeah, Patrick Batman using glue sticks as ice core. Yeah, that was cool. I really enjoyed it. As a geologist, I loved seeing that. That was so... They set that up so well.
There were loads of really great touches.
I don't know how to rate this. It's low S tier, high A tier. I could be convinced either way.
It's not aiming to actually horrify you, but what it's doing, it does really well.
Mm-hmm.
I would push for an A if you're cool with that.
Yeah, very much
celebrating it, but it's not aiming to actually disturb us. Like I'd say this one similarly aim to disturb us a lot more, but these two feel of a piece. We're efficient tonight. Just to absolutely make sure we cover it, I would submit Rammstein's Du riechst so gut, which I think you suggested.
No, it was in our list.
Well, we're talking about it. We should get one in. I'm sure you were the person who said we should get a Rammstein in.
Yeah. Yeah, because they do a lot of really disturbing... I'd never seen the video for it. Rammstein's song, Sonne.
Oh, Sonne.
Is a take on Snow White.
Yeah.
With Rammstein as the dwarves, which is just totally perverse.
Yes. Totally perverse, you say? Oh, deeply subversive. Deeply subversive.
Yeah.
It had to be said. Till, what are you doing, buddy? I'm not actually sure if that is Till Lindemann.
Yes, it is.
It's kind of stacked. Could be.
Yes, he is. Very much so.
Yeah.
He's this retelling of Little Red Riding Hood is a lot of fun. Just coming through and him hunting through the masquerade ball and ending up upstairs and releasing the wolves inside of himself and ravishing Little Red Riding Hood and her coming up as a werewolf in the end.
There are some great touches. The whole vibe of it has this lovely sort of Angela Carter in the Company of Wolves vibe. Another film we really need to cover. But Murgoot, we were spared this month covering horror and the erotic. Luckily, members did vote us away from that topic, but I feel we're sort of circling around it. We're orbiting it because this video is a strong example of horror and the erotic. You know? Oof.
Oh, yeah.
There is
so.
a genius touch when your man gets up to the bedroom and she's on the bed there. Did you notice before the wolves burst out of him, did you notice where the first wolf burst out from?
His chest or maybe lower down.
I think it was a little bit lower down. I think their imagery was quite clear there. Yes. about where this vital carnal force is expressed primarily.
Yeah.
But then just having multiple walls burst out was a really nice original touch. I wasn't sold on the eye effects, but they grew on me massively, and actually end up it is so much more memorable than if they're just used contact lenses. So yeah, kudos.
Yeah. Very, very effective video. A lot of fun too. I read through the lyrics, and the German to English that I read was kind of disjointed, but I definitely didn't pick up all the nuances in German.
Oh, they're so good. What's the ein Raubtier, das von Hunger schreit, wird richtig meilenweit. So like a predator crying from hunger. I'll stalk you for miles. Or sorry, I'll follow you for miles. But yeah, I love it. I love it. I'm biased as well because it's Rammstein and because the track's an absolute banger. But I would push for an S.
I was
Cautiously
going for an E
biased
here, but I could be talked into an S. Just
yeah, look, it's getting crowded in A. It's getting crowded there.
Yeah, it is. It is one of those that on rewatch you notice more and more details coming through. I've seen it 3 times now, and every viewing was slightly different for me. The third time was yesterday when my fever had just broken, so I was barely conscious. But
you're tripping and you decide, you know what, I'm going to watch some Rammstein.
Yes, ma'am.
Fair play, fair play. What stood out to you? Like you said, you picked up on some extra details.
Just the way the crowd was moving during the masquerade, and just the way Lindman's character filtered his way through and up the stairs. Also, the handkerchief caught my attention in the way it was taken all the way through.
Oh, I missed that.
The ravishment.
I'm gonna have to rewatch, unfortunately. I was just enjoying the color work as well. Rob Agar has a really good video on the psychology of extras. And one point you take from it is that if the film is good, it can use subtle color coding to just sort of tell you, pay attention to this person, don't pay attention to that person. This person is in that faction, this one's in the other one. And just the design here makes it really clear that the mostly black wearing ball goers are sort of one mass, and your Little Red Riding Hood and this guy are differentiated, and just the color design does that really nicely.
Black versus red versus white.
Yeah, strong color work. So yeah, a strong S. I think we can get one more in. It's an absolute free choice for you, Murgoot. Of the we got.
Oh, let's see. What was the one that? Let's go with the next one on the list. Beast of Bourbon, Psycho.
Yes.
This one was interesting. It was subtle. Gave me Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds vibe.
Massively.
Red right hand type vibe. And just, it was effective. Almost country style, folksy. And you had to pay attention to the background to get the full.
Well, yeah, that was the power it used throughout the entire video. And folks, basically the whole video is like this, and it's that tension that directors use often. Maybe the best example is The Terminator, After the destruction of the truck, and you think the Terminator's been defeated. Sarah Connor is hugging Kyle Reese, but just the way it's framed, you're like, hey, there's quite a lot of empty space there, quite a lot. And your eyes just keeps pulling into the background, just thinking, I need to keep an eye on that. It causes tension. And that trick is used throughout this video. You think,
between the band rotating through and the tensions between the husband and the wife and the assault, and then listening to the lyrics while everything. First time I watched it for the lyrics. The second time I watched it, I didn't so much pay attention to the lyrics as I did the background. And then the third time I watched it, I listened to the lyrics specifically while watching the background. And it's very effective in the way it does it. It deserves multiple watchings.
Yeah. And as you say, a story in the lyrics, a story in the background. It's a strong performance. And there's a clever use of the band members sort of rotating in. They kind of break the tension, but they're just clearly moved in on trolley platforms. Very clever. So you say, oh, okay, no, I do need to pay attention, but they're kind of telling you, oh, there's still nothing really happening until they actually pay it off.
Something happens.
Something does happen. Nicely judged, subtle, well-directed, pleasant song. We've run out of time for our topic. So how would you rate this one? Beasts of Bourbon, Psycho. A very pleasant recommendation.
Strong A.
Strong. Yeah. I'll go for that. Simple choice, well told. Yeah, I'll go for that. And I'll get this ranked if I can. No. Oh dear. I get this ranked if I can quickly. There we go. Earning its place in the A tier, although sitting very awkwardly because Pixlr is being a bit of a pain. There we go. And I'll just say a very quick hello to Michael Myers. Hi. Jay Weatherford. And Alabama Wyatt. Not a name I recommend, but a very good point you're making. Black, red and white. It turns up a lot of places. Yes, including some interesting flags. And Brother Johnny, hyped for Alien Romulus. I don't know, man. I'd like it to be good. I would really like a good Alien movie. We all would, I think. I haven't looked into Romulus, to be honest. I've been very put off by what they've done in the past. So, but maybe if they've had a big changing of the
by the trailer, so I'm kind of ignoring it until people say otherwise.
Yeah, fair. I'll wait for some news on it. Maybe see what Mr. H Reviews thinks of it before I go in. Right. With that said, shall we have a look at Hammer Horror? The Curse of Frankenstein. I do hope we will. Otherwise, I haven't got anything else for the stream, Murgoot. Okay. All right. I will lay out a bit of history, folks. By the way, notice us getting to the topic in 34 minutes. We are good tonight. We are very good tonight. Oh, I will say, Michael Myers has just put on a good comment about the use of blank and empty space in framing. Yeah, favorite one is in Hell Night when Linda Blair and Peter Barton are in the foreground while the baddie rises up from beneath and rug behind them. Classic technique. Lovely stuff. And a good example. I should find one that isn't the Terminator, but I can't help it. That's the one I go to each time. Oh, and Jay Weatherford is also about to watch Alien Romulus. All right. So here we go. We are covering the history of Hammer Studios now. A little bit of it. We're going to cover the classic Hammer arc. And what I mean by that, before we get into this specific film, is a little bit of the history of it. We don't have to do it all tonight. We're gonna stick with classic Hammer for a while, so we'll break it up a little bit. So I'm not going to talk too much about Bray Studios tonight. I'll just talk about the basics. So one of those is that something that surprised me, as much as Teddy's cameo just then. I did hear you, Teddy. Bless him. I always think of Hammer horror as a late 50s thing. And I think I probably even said last week, oh yeah, the late 50s into the mid 70s. Because I think Adam Loves Horror asked about Hammer. He'd never heard of them. And I just said, yeah, late 50s up to mid 70s. That is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw they've actually been going since the early 30s, and they were putting out horror films in the early 30s. Now, a good example is, was it The Haunting of the Mary Celeste, released as Phantom Ship, starring Bela Lugosi. That's mid 30s. So they were going for a while, but they fell out of favor. They stopped producing their own movies, and they became basically just a distribution house for a very long time, under the remit of a man called Sir James Carreras. He was the money guy. But in the mid-50s, his son starts expressing an interest in taking over and deciding to make their production studio kick off again. And so they start producing their own movies. They gather a bit of talent, but they're not putting a ton of money into this. You'll notice that the budget for The Curse of Frankenstein, it's not huge. They made this for £65,000. Murgoot, can I ask you to go on the inflation calculator and work out what £65,000 was in today's money? And that's from 1957. So
let's see. Let's see. British pounds.
While you're doing that, I'll read you a little bit. Oh gosh, where is it? Okay. So
Let's see.
they didn't actually get back into. I've gone and lost my my page here. 157, I think, is what I'm after, folks. I'm reading to you from a classic bit of research. So yeah, they start making their own stuff. I'm forgetting, it's James Carreras' son is the one leading this, and they don't go straight into horror. Probably the one you know best is the Quatermass Experiment, or Experiment, because they really wanted to advertise strongly that they were getting an X rating, because my goodness, they're going out. And that does very well. They ride that, and they're quick. They're making these films in sort of fairly cheap and cheerful fashion, but they're really popular. They're rushing them out. As the NREAB has already said, The Abominable Snowman was one they got out before then. Before this one, Atypical, 1956. Quatermass Experiment was 1955. I'm just checking again here. X the Unknown, they follow it up with in 1956. So you notice X the Unknown also making a big play. Hey, we got an X certificate, guys. We're really extreme.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you don't remember your BBFC history from the times I tortured you with it, the X certificate was very new. X certificate had come out in the last couple of years, so it was still kind of fancy, and you could get a bit of attention by advertising that you had been given this new, very adult certificate. Murgoot, sorry, you had the figures, I think.
Yes, it's equivalent to £1,319,000 today.
Not bad. Not bad. Not a huge budget, but not bad. it explains why there's a certain amount of cost cutting, which you'll see, but we should also note that the money didn't come entirely from Hammer. It must be said. Now, I have lost the link I am looking for, unfortunately. Gosh darn it. No. I'm looking for the name. There we go. Thank you very much. Right. So the talent for this, we've got to say, was British. So the script was by a chap named James Sangster. Can I find my copy? Can I find my little picture of James Sangster? Sorry, folks. Here we go. There's your Jimmy Sangster there. Didn't really want to be a writer, wanted to be a producer, wanted to be a director, would get to be a director with Hammer later. But here he was brought in to do a redo on the script because the initial script was not well received. Sad to say. I'm so sorry. I've lost my I've lost the name I'm looking for. Okay, I can't give you a name this time. Apologies. I also realize it's Enrique Carreras was the founder and James Carreras is the son. State of this stream, honestly. State. Right. So Jimmy Sangster was brought in to do a rewrite because the original script for this was not well received. That original script had been brought about by, well, some interesting people. They would be Max J. Rosenberg and Milton Subotsky. Those names ring a bell for anybody?
No? Not off the top of my head.
Don't worry about it. That would be the founders of Amicus Productions.
Okay.
Yes. They submitted a script, but it wasn't happening. The script that they wanted to get made, it got passed to Hammer, but they ultimately didn't like it. They thought it was way too close to another copyrighted version of Frankenstein. So it got passed, it got reworked. And our boy Jimmy Sangster ends up writing it. And he stays with Hammer a while. We'll talk about him more later on another stream because Hammer develops, as well as a stable cast of actors, it also gets a stable cast of background people. So we've got here Jimmy Sangster, who you've seen, but I'll also show you Terence Fisher. Terence Fisher, who directed this, who would direct a large number of Hammer films, seen in the sort of background of our film for tonight. I've got another nice one of him where he's looking kind of Chad there. What do you reckon, Murgoot? Sort of Chad vibes?
Yeah. He's either signaling time or telling people that the shot was bad. I can't tell.
I know. He looks to me like he's taking one of those infamous British tea breaks that used to really annoy all of the American directors and producers. Kubrick hated it. Spielberg hated it. Cameron particularly hated it. But I'm sorry, if you're making a film in England, you're going to have to pause for the tea breaks. Anyway, he won't have been surprised by that. He's British talent. Now, we should note that a lot of the money for this was provided from America. So, British director, British writer, British company, but it was American money initially, which is no problem. And it certainly made a lot of money for the Americans. But you may detect that it had a little bit of an impact. Maybe it made Hammer go a little a little harder than Hammer would have normally gone. By the way, chat, I apologise that I can't see it as much because I'm sort of looking at my tabs. So I'll be back with you in a second. So we've got American Money comes in, and they decide to relaunch. So this one, as we'll talk about when we review the film itself, it's a tiny bit janky, but they're doing the best they can. They will refine their art. They will refine their sort of typical character casting. For instance, in these early runs of the Gothic horror adaptations, because when this turned out to be a success, they went immediately into just making more and more and more. And they form a kind of staple. They get this rhythm. Peter Cushing is your upper class goodman, and Christopher Lee is your badman, and they face off against each other in just various vises, whether Lee is Frankenstein's creature, the Mummy, Dracula, etc., etc. They will vary this later. They will experiment later. But for the first few years, they are firing these out, basically to a formula. Same formula and same location. We'll talk more about that location, Bray Studios, in the next stream. But one other crucial detail about these horror movies that are coming out is they aren't like the Universal ones. They've got a lot more license. Remember, these are X-rated. Now, since we're talking ratings, I am obviously going to read to you from the BBFC. I am just looking for an excuse, to be honest, guys. I'm reading from the memoirs of the president at the time. Sorry, I think he would have been called the secretary of the board of British Board of Film Censorship at the time, John Trevelyan. If more of them would let's try again. If more of the ex-directors would publish their memoirs, I'd turn to them, but they've deprived me. So, this is him writing in the 1970s. Horror films were rarely a problem, since most of them came to us from Hammer Films, the most successful production company in this field, from whom we always had full cooperation. Now, what he means by that is that Hammer Productions submits a script to the BBFC in advance, and the BBFC then says, well, if you film this, we'll have to cut it. So try not to do that, basically. It saves them making any material that they can't use. Bear that in mind, because it doesn't work in this case. In the 1950s, their Dracula and Frankenstein were not only successful in Britain, but were probably the first British films that were also commercially successful in the United States. I remember a talk that I had with Sir James Carreras many years ago, in which we agreed that his company's horror films would avoid mixing sex with horror and would avoid scenes which people could regard as disgusting and revolting. The second part of this agreement has continued to the present day, but in an increasingly permissive age, we modified our attitude to the introduction of sex. Nudity became quite common in these films, and by 1970, we even had lesbian vampires. Dun, 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 dun. There is John Trevelyan there from his memoirs, What the Censor Saw. Now, as I said, the plan of the BBFC reviewing the script in advance and getting to tell them, this is okay, you can film this and we will let you release it, did not exactly go to plan. If I can find the quotation quickly, there we go. So Sangster submits his script to the BBFC for examination, and Audrey Field, and I'm reading off the Wikipedia here, Audrey Field reported on in October 1956, we are concerned about the flavour of this script, which, in its preoccupation with horror and gruesome detail, goes far beyond what we are accustomed to allow even for the X category. I'm afraid we can give no assurance that we should be able to pass a film based on the present script, and a revised script should be sent to us for our comments, in which the overall unpleasantness should be mitigated. However, they did not change the script. They went ahead and figured they could chance it. As you may have detected, and as Murgoot you will definitely not be surprised by, John Trevelyan, much more relaxed and lenient attitude to it than that particular reviewer. But you will detect there's a bit of censorship happened. Some changes clearly done. You'll notice in a stark contrast to the 1931 Dracula by James Whale, the child that is encountered by the lakeside is not killed on camera, or even seen to be killed. Whereas the 1931 did film it and show it. Now, it had to be cut, but it was restored by the time they were seeing this in the 50s. There's also a shot of a severed head being thrown into a vat of acid that is gone and is lost. And they also had to trim footage of the eyeballs being placed into a jar. So, this isn't restored to us now, but unfortunately the footage of the head being dissolved in acid, it is lost to us. So,
yeah.
But nevertheless, this was a success. This was a massive success. And we'll talk a little bit about why, but the fact that this worked so well really set the tone for Hammer. And as a result, they launched into like a turbo mode of horror film production, realizing we've got a formula that works. We're going to make a gothic horror adapting a well-known story that was already successful in the Universal horror days. We're going to make sure we don't breach copyright. And we're going to have our known good guy, and we're going to have our known bad guy, and we're going to stick to that. And it becomes this formula that you go to again and again. And this formula is what we're going to stick to in this classic arc. All right? You'll see it evolve as we go into some of the sequels, but we're not going to veer too far from that. In the next arc, we'll look at when Hammer went very experimental, when they went weird. I think we'll even do the 1936 film. But with that, I will leave it for now because there is plenty of history of Hammer to cover as we go on. I don't want to cover it all tonight.
Well, we've got 2 super chats from Adam Loves Horror.
Oh, absolute Chad. Hi, Adam. I remember you asking about Hammer Horror last week. Let's see. Watching L84. Oh, watching later? Maybe? Am I confused? Did I read that right? Like and subscribe for Lesbian Vamps. I'll give you forewarning, Adam. I have got Twins of Evil ready for us. And I think we will cover that later. I didn't even know that the Twins of Evil were actually twins who were in Playboy. Absolute filth, honestly. There we go. And Adam Loves Horror again for $2 saying, enjoyed the film. Thanks for the recommendation. I am very glad to hear that. I think we've got a slightly split panel on this one, but I'm going to try and win Murgoot round. But I'm really glad you watched this. For anyone who didn't see it, it is free on YouTube. It's also free on Amazon Prime, and I'm sure you can find it elsewhere. So there we go. I'm really glad you enjoyed it, and we'll now get into talking about it. Oh, the NREAB saying a lot of the changes were made due to the threat of legal action by Universal. They could not have the flat top Frankenstein with a bolt or copy the set. Absolutely, yes. Lots of changes made. I think particularly it wasn't just Frankenstein. There was one called Son of Frankenstein from, I want to say, 1939, that the original script that Jimmy Sangster had to junk, they felt was a bit too close to it. I mean, let's maybe have a look at it. I think they clearly hinted it. And let's be honest, you're adapting Frankenstein. It's gonna be kind of close. Here's your classic Boris Karloff, and I'll drop the comment there. Here's your classic Boris Karloff, and here is your late appearance, Christopher Lee. Now, the significant difference, but they've still got him in all black. They've got that silhouette. They've subtly changed it, but the color scheme is still there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to the Karloff. It's pretty obvious what they're hinting at. It's pretty darn obvious. Anyway, with that said, I guess we'll just move straight into full-on discussion.
Okay.
I'm going to be watching out for this, Murgoot. I don't remember if they stick with the what would you call this? A title card? No, not even a title card, but
it's an opening card.
Yeah.
Can't remember the phrase they use in silent movies, but it's
leftist meme.
It's the wall o' text.
Great big wall o' text setting the scene.
Yeah. Switzerland, huh? Well, okay. Yeah, it opens with madman asking talk to a priest. You find out that it's Victor von Frankenstein. Frankenstein. God.
Frankenstein.
All I can think is Gene Wilder. Frankenstein.
Mel Brooks got a lot to answer for.
But he starts giving his confession or what happened, and
we got this I almost want to call it in medias res, but it's not. It's your flash forward.
Mm-hmm.
And he calls for that priest, but then he basically says, actually, I'm not really confessing. I just knew you're someone who would come. So we already get the sign of Frankenstein is kind of arrogant, but he's also been abandoned. He's not a man of faith at all.
No, he's a man of science.
Mm.
Yeah, and he starts off with a story about being young inheritor. His mother dies, and he inherits the estate. And he sets up a trust for his aunt and his cousin, and he hires on a tutor, Paul Kemper.
Klemper, yeah. Played by Robert Urquhart. Oh, we should know, obviously, Peter Cushing. Klemper. Oh, I said Klemper, didn't I? Sorry, Klemper. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, in the title card, you notice that he was on loan from a different studio. Very sad to say, Mr. Urquhart, this is a bit unique for him. Despite, he's so good in this film, but I didn't see him return in any of the other Hammer horrors. I checked out his filmography. He kind of goes back to the theatre or doing thrillers. He did a Le Carre adaptation of the Looking Glass War, but this is a bit of a weird one for him. He does not return to the horror field.
Did not realize that. Didn't do research on him.
No, don't worry, man.
Anyway, they tutor for several years, and von Frankenstein starts down the road of advanced biology. They run an experiment and resurrect a dead puppy, and this is my greatest achievement, but we can't publish until we've done more. And somehow he manages to get the hands of one of the world's greatest sculptors. He gets a body of a hanged man.
I'm sorry, Murgoot, I have to pause you there. Chat is obviously full of of Brits. Look at you, lads. Look at you. You couldn't help it. You saw Melvin Hayes and you jumped all over it. Yes. Sorry, Murgoot, that may not be familiar to you, but for Brits, we know that this guy is a later television actor, but
Yeah.
I think he's there basically because he had been in the Quatermass Experiment 2 just before that, and so he was basically on Hammer's roster, and they just kind of figured, we've got you, let's use you quickly. Again, they reuse actors very often, so
Yeah.
I
He
think that's why he's there.
does a fabulous job as a young Peter Cushing.
Oh, he's great. I mean, this whole sequence I love. They just give you a really short montage, and then very swiftly, within a couple of transitions, they've got them switching role, and you get all the idea. Oh, the Padawan is now the master. It's great stuff. Just really nicely done.
Yeah. And I love the experimental gear, just so wonderfully goofy, all the Erlenmeyer flasks. It just turns the knob and they start bubbling and smoking, and the Van de Graaff generator and the everything like that. And
Well, there we go. I'll see if I can make that a bit bigger for you. There you go. I obviously got a footage of the lab. It's busy. It's a bit mad. But it's also lively. Just obviously this is absolute nonsense. Why do you need that many Erlenmeyer flasks and conical flasks? What is that red liquid? Doesn't matter. It looks busy. It's entertaining. It's fun. They know what they're doing. It's just gorgeous to look at. Oh, and hello, Mr. Gently Benevolent. Good to see you. Waking up, starting the day with some Hammer horror discussion. Yes. Did you? I think it's Bob Urquhart here. He actually adopted this dog that they resurrect. Isn't that sweet? Isn't that sweet?
Yeah, and okay, back to it. Frankenstein invites one of the wisest scientific minds so he can get his brain. He pushes him off the balcony, and then he and Krempa get into an argument and smash the beaker that the brain is in and causes brain damage and when Frankenstein goes to repair the brain and then they resurrect the monster, he's brain damaged and extremely violent. And the monster escapes. They hunt him down. Krempa shoots him through the eye.
If I may, they really show you it's the outward expression of the evil within. This is a total physiognomy check fail. They're not shy about showing it for you. We'll also maybe just take a moment on the neck. Note the neck. Covered up here, but a sight of maybe, shall we say, some questionable makeup later in the film. But I'll let us move on. As you said, he escapes.
And Krempa shoots him through the eye. They bury the monster, and Victor goes back, digs him up, causes another row with Krempa. And proceeds from there. Krempa tries to get Frankenstein's cousin to leave. There's
yes, Hazel. Chat, behave.
There's the sort of unnecessary plot with the maid. Frankenstein uses her as a mistress, and she tries to blackmail him. He locks her in the lab. She gets killed by the monster.
I'm gonna have to try and persuade you on the maid. I think the maid is kind of wonderful and crucial, but we'll come back to her.
Yeah. The wedding is set between Frankenstein and his cousin. She invites Krimpa. He doesn't really respond, but he shows up after everybody is left. And then tragedy ensues when she goes. Frankenstein and Krimpa get into an argument, and when they leave to do their argument, what is the cousin's name? I'm brain farting.
Oh no. She's played by Hazel Court, and her name is Elizabeth. God, I really should remember. So we never remember any character names. We never do.
Elizabeth breaks into the lab and finds the monster, who breaks free. Well, the monster breaks free. She finds the lab, and he's up on the roof, and he spooks her by accidentally breaking one of the windows. And she climbs up onto the roof to follow him. Frankenstein comes back, trying to shoot the monster, shoots her, and then tries to shoot at the monster again and ends up pitching his pistol. That never works. And then Frankenstein finds the lantern and tosses it onto the monster. The monster catches on fire, falls through the window into the vat of acid. And Krimpa get back to the prison, and
Krimpa looking a heck of a lot like Lambda here. For anyone in the same internet circles as we are. He really does look like Lambda. Anyway.
The priest doesn't believe Frankenstein at all, and Krimpa shows up, and Krimpa denies everything, and Frankenstein is led to his death by guillotine.
Yes. Credits play out over the guillotine. And all that in about 80 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So short film, but it felt a lot longer than it was. It dragged on in points to me. It's too many repeated scenes, slow in parts. I don't know. It did hold together well. The first 40 minutes dragged for me. I mean, really dragged. But once it hit about the 45 minute mark, it really picked up and redeemed itself in a lot of ways.
I'm gonna have to work hard to get that upgrade, Murgoot. I've got to say, like, this is my favorite Frankenstein movie. I mean, I've seen the Kenneth Branagh adaptation an embarrassing number of times, but this is my favorite by quite a way. So I've got to fight for it. I've got to get that upgrade from you. Can I ask, do you have a favorite Frankenstein?
The original Universal with Boris Karloff, followed by Kenneth Branagh's with Robert De Niro, and I keep wanting to say Frankenstein 2000, but that's not it. John Hurt.
Have it.
So the one with a little bit of time travel.
Is that the Sean Bean one?
Frankenstein Unbound.
I do not know it. I do not know that one.
1990. And if you look it up, the sewn together,
John Gorris got there.
the sewn together eyeballs
Mm.
with different shades of brown and blue and green eyeballs. I dressed as Frankenstein, and let me tell you, those custom color contacts were expensive and very uncomfortable.
No worries. Let's see. Davy Dread is approving of your choice of Frankenstein. So you're not alone, and I'm not doing down the Universal.
Yeah. And then my fourth favorite would have to be Bride of Frankenstein, the original.
Yeah.
Not the god awful one with Sting. Ugh. Well, that's The Bride, but God, that movie's awful.
Okay. No, classic choice. I think. Okay, so the way I'm going to kind of pitch it is it's interesting. The Kenneth Branagh one is probably our best point of comparison because that Frankenstein really aimed at authenticity. We have covered it very briefly on this channel. It was following the success of Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula in 1992. And so they decided, okay, now there have been a ridiculous number of Dracula and Frankenstein movies. We need to stand out. We're going to take the authenticity angle. So they did that. That worked. And then they said, okay, we'll do Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And it's pretty darn faithful to the novel, but still veers off a fair bit towards the end. What can you do? But in that one, it was so much a spirit of the age adaptation in that I was fascinated by, and I've meant to make a video about this for years, it's really transformed by the spirit of the time so that we get the psychological explanation of Frankenstein's actions. Actually, Frankenstein needs a deep psychological motivation. He's got a childhood trauma that he needs to process. So that Frankenstein by Kenneth Branagh is a tortured genius whose mother dies in childbirth, and therefore he must stop people dying ever again. And it doesn't matter how many stepsisters he has to pound to make that happen. So, it's very much transformed by the sort of, social, cultural mores and worldview of the 1990s, where everyone was sort of therapized and everything had to spring from a childhood trauma. And an absolutely massive contrast. And in that one, of course, there's lots of homoeroticism, and Frankenstein is really like the tortured genius. He's really not a bad one. He intended good, but it just went a bit wrong because Kenneth Branagh. I absolutely adore that this is not hugely faithful to Mary Shelley's novel, but I just absolutely love that the arrogant genius of Frankenstein is also morally he's a rotter. And the film drops in so much where he considers himself above basically petty conventional morality. And I absolutely love how the film deals with that. Oh, gosh. Robert De Niro is Mookenstein's Mook. Yes. What a callback. Anyone watching on the replay, and hi everyone on the replay. Love you guys. Remembering to say hi to you 1 hour 14 in. That's going to make no sense to people if you're watching this in like 2026. But if you are, hi. Gosh. And
yes, John Goris, Frankenhooker was a hoot. Hilarious movie.
Yeah, how come that didn't make the cut?
Because it's not that great of a movie.
Fair play, fair play. Yeah, so the moral angle on this is something I find absolutely fantastic, and as we sort of mentioned, it's this is a little bit odd because this is really the first of their gothic horrors. It's not played to type. Peter Cushing in this has some pretty dark grey morality. Like, he's not doing things to cause pain. So in the kind of classic, Dungeons and Dragons morality system, he's not evil. But he's absolutely chaotic. He really doesn't care about the law. He doesn't care about morals. He sees a boundary and he just wants to break it. In that brilliant opening sequence, he quickly learns everything, and then within a couple of transitions is ahead of the tutor and is now teaching. And he's just basically saying, well, we surpassed that level. Now we have to keep surpassing. We've brought something back to life. And let me zoom out of that. We brought a puppy back to life. We conquered death. Now we have to create life. He doesn't pause. He is relentless empirical progressivism. Like, every barrier must be broken. This guy, not a Chesterton's fence respecter.
No.
And we see this actually have conflicts, terrible consequences. This is a film with an actually really interesting and, I think, unusual worldview. It's a very conservative worldview, you might say.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I talked for absolutely ages there, Murgoot.
Oh, no problem. I did think it was, as I said before during the Guinness pour, he refuses to publish because he needs to do something grander to make his point. And just showing his arrogance there. He doesn't just want to show that he can resurrect a puppy. He has to be the best.
Yeah.
Publish and rub everybody's nose in it, that he can actually bring things to life.
And it's weird because you would think resurrecting the puppy is plenty good. That would do the job. But I think the real thing is that ego of, actually, no, I really want the glory, not just from publishing, but I want to create the life myself.
Mm-hmm.
Before that leads us on to something specific, but before we go further, I just want to say, Patrick Batman once again has got ahead of me. Do you have my notes, Patrick? Do you have my notes? Noting that from the very early Frankenstein, we see he's very matter-of-fact, unemotional about his father's death. Now, he's
mother's death.
Mother's death and father's death. Yeah, he's
True.
Just happy to use a bit of subterfuge to get his way, to get his tutor, which tells us a bit. But we also get that he's not going to cancel the allowance going to his, I believe, aunt. And that's nice. Like, you get the sense that he's not sentimental at all. He's really uninterested in them, but he knows his obligation there. He knows it's what his mother would want, and therefore he keeps it going. So he's not evil. He's not a mustache twirler. He's not chaotic evil. But he's like, yeah, you can have your allowance, but get out. Get out of the house. Leave. Oh,
Yeah.
Joe, we will do an arc with M in. We will do an arc. One day we'll cover it. I can't wait. There are too
Peter
many.
Lorre is horrifying in that movie. He really is. Sorry to take it off track.
No, it's fine. I don't know if you know this. It might be M. It could be another one. But I believe after seeing it, Name I probably shouldn't say on YouTube, but Goebbels approached Fritz Lang and said, you're a great director. I want you to make films for us.
Mm-hmm.
And then Lang legged it.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, interesting. Yeah, really, really good stuff. Really good stuff. So you talked about he wants to take the next step now, and resurrecting the puppy is not enough. He needs to go further. He wants to create. He wants to like really own it and create life himself.
Wants to create the perfect man, the sculptor's hands, and the scholar's brain.
Yes. Now, this is good stuff. I know you said she didn't have much to do with it, but Justine here, she tells him she's pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this really cool irony that he has created life. And in both cases, he doesn't care for it.
I didn't think about it that way.
It's a lovely little parallel. There's like Frankenstein is a deeply reactionary tool. Like there's so much in it about the sort of, it's hard to get nowadays because so many things aren't taboo to us. Like grave robbing doesn't exactly make us recoil in horror. A blasphemy doesn't make us recoil in horror. Might make us lock our office down if we're like a Batley grammar school. But in this, Frankenstein has so much horror that is now socially kind of, I want to say, defunct. And some of it is a blasphemy. It's a man creating life. It's resurrecting the dead. It's life created outside of marriage. We already did life created by a male. Like there's so much that is like anti-nature, anti-God in that, which is sort of the basis for the downfall of Victor due to his hubris. This is played a little bit differently, but it's still nice and layered. Do you know the novel well? Do you have a good memory?
It's been quite a while since I've read the novel.
No worries. We probably shouldn't go too far into it because, you know, this wasn't an attempt to do it faithfully.
No, not at all.
No, there are nice little touches, you know, like speaking of nice little touches. All right, Justine. She's obviously the name of a maid who is killed in the book in different circumstances, but it's nice that they reference her. They also cut out so much of the globe trotting that is part of the story, and we also don't have the hyper verbose creature that Mary Shelley created. We get much like the Universal Horrors, a basically wordless creature. Oh, the NRAB is also pointing out, yes, medical surgery was extremely controversial. Transplanting limbs and organs, yes, absolutely. How does that affect the resurrection? So much. Again, I don't even think about that aspect because it's just so normalized for us. Yeah. And Patrick Batman highlighting the absolute savage line that Peter Cushing gives to her when he's like, probably wasn't me. Could be anyone. Could be anyone from the village. Savage. But there's also a level of, I wouldn't maybe say horror, but taboo here, because there's a class barrier being broken. Now, I've not seen Downton Abbey, but I know, like, I believe now when we tend to see it, the whole the master loves the maid is this real romantic trope. Whereas here it's a bit more, oh dear, he really is breaking convention. He really doesn't follow the rules. He doesn't stick to it. There is a kind of taboo and a horror in him sleeping with the maid.
Yeah. Well, it's I don't know. It was more the master of the house sleeping with a maid as a mistress follows in the romanticism. God, Byron Shelley, all those. That was kind of a trope for that time, so it fits fairly well. It's not the Victorian social moire, it's more the romanticist. But it's still fairly shocking for the 1950s.
I mean, this would be too. I mean, it's quite a lot to see on screen. You know, even now, it's quite a lot for a 1950s audience to see. So, like, I'm thinking back to what we just read. Well, we read earlier from John Trevelyan when he was like, try and keep the sex and violence apart, and they're like, no, he's absolutely going to be groping the maid. Like, even from the start, Hammer horror. It's kind of horny, This is thirsty horror.
And Patrick Bateman, I know it's for proper horror show, but I've seen the first 2 seasons of Penny Dreadful, and yeah, it was halfway decent. It was goofy, but it was halfway decent.
Yeah, I've only seen the first season, and I don't remember it huge well. But if you need me to rewatch something with Josh Hartnett in, well, I mean, I guess so. Yeah, I guess I could do it. Oh well. And when he's in this M. Night Shyamalan coming up as well, I mean, I can probably fit that in and maybe go back to him in Black Dahlia from 2006. Maybe
he's in
a quick faculty. Sorry?
He's in Shamalama-Lama's.
Yeah, Trap, yes.
Okay.
We need to cover that, and we need to have a little sweepstakes on what the twist is. But yeah, sorry. Yeah, I have meant to rewatch it. I liked season 1, but I don't remember it too well. Definitely could go with a follow-up.
Josh Hartnett for you, Eva Green for me.
Oh, yeah, everyone's winning. What was that Bertolucci film that Eva Green was in?
Oh,
Is it around the Paris student riots? God, that was a really good film.
Bertolucci, Eva Green.
I don't know why I'm. Well, I know why, because we brought
The
up Eva Green.
Dreamers.
The Dreamers. That sounds about right. Really good film, guys. No, everyone thinks Last Tango in Paris. No. Bertolucci, Last Emperor, and The Dreamers. Those are some excellent films. Sorry, it's rare we don't talk horror. So, we're talking about some aspects of the extremity just while we're here, because it's kind of on topic. I just wanted to note, we kind of mentioned the killing of the child here happens completely off screen, but you notice they frame the child by the lake. So for people who, well, would definitely know the Universal Studios one, the shot of the child by the lake, you're basically expecting the kid to be chucked in and drowned. And they put that in your head by showing you it. But then they have the kid walk off, and in theory, he could still be alive.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't look at it too much. They follow it up in very short order, though, by this, which really shocked me.
Shooting him in the eye?
Yeah. I mean, how they handle it afterwards is where I think you can see the censorship a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But this shot here, I know it's a little blurry, but I just wanted everyone to catch that moment when Christopher Lee had clearly been sort of like cupping blood in his eye socket. And then when he leans forward, it can just all sort of go out of his hand. He may also have a sort of blood-soaked sponge in his hand that he can then press against his eye and make it all flow out. But just, that is a lot. That is a heck of a lot for 1957.
Yeah, pretty graphic for the time.
How did this work for you when you saw it? This scene in particular.
This is one of the better ones, and it just got better closer to the end. I mean, they really started putting the production value in late in the movie. So,
I mean, your initial take was not super positive, and I do want to say, like, I agree. There is some rough stuff early on. I think did I mention about the first draft where they thought that the script only had about 55 minutes of story in it?
You mentioned it when we were in the green room.
Well, there we go. Chat, you now know the first draft had about 55 minutes of story. And so, but the reworking, I do wonder if it stuck kind of close to that and then just sort of gave it more length. Something we highlighted was that there is a certain amount of a slower pace that is just coming with the time this was made. But also there are some distinct sort of repetitions. I think the one we highlighted was Paul and Victor had the argument over,
and over.
Yeah, just Victor, Paul, you'll help me. And then Paul's like, no, Victor, no, I won't. And they had that scene about 5 times over the course of the movie. And, it's just like the go-to. It's like, why would he change his mind? You haven't. They have some good stuff, when, how can I say, just when the brain is damaged because Paul interrupts and smashes the jar, and then kind of Victor makes a case of, well, you damaged the brain, so it's your fault. That's
and
kind
then
of
the
strong.
scene where Victor's sitting there with a magnifying glass, pulling glass out of the brain. Okay.
It's wonderfully grim, isn't it? It's so grim. I love it. I love it. Oh, hang on. Here we should go. We should mention this, actually. Patrick, that's a really good point. Patrick Batman adding, and colour film was new then, so probably had an even bigger impact. Yes. Remember, TV is largely broadcasting in black and white. Psycho would come out 3 years later and would go in black and white. It was relatively new. In fact, this was going to be shot in black and white, but the American producer saw the script, thought it had legs on it, and said, okay, we won't make this as a quickie like they did with the Quatermass experiment 2 years earlier. We'll put money into this and we'll do it in colour. But, actually seeing the red, it does make an impact. Yeah. Yeah, so with some of the repetition, some of it does drag out. I'll grant you. I'll grant you that. It does take 52 minutes of an 80-minute film for the creature to arise. And you probably could have got there a bit quicker.
Yeah.
I would. I mean, I'm not saying this helps. The pacing being of the period is something I'll just throw out there. We expect a slightly slower pace. We didn't all have TikTok-induced ADHD back then, but there's also a certain amount of And the NREAB filling in something I had wondered about, that Abominable Snowman was the year earlier was black and white. See, they made that one as a quickie, and that is also on Prime, by the way, if anyone wants to see it for free. I'm sure YouTube probably has it as well. Sorry, where was I going with this? Darn it. What was I saying, Murgoot?
I don't know.
Oh, sorry, it was about the pacing. There are other elements that make it a bit rough. I mean, I think we are seeing a company trying to find its feet, bringing in a new writer, testing. Let me just check. I want to know if this was Terence Fisher's first for Hammer. I should remember this. Yes. Yeah. This is a first for him in horror. So it's a new one for him. Basically, the company is really just in the early days, and there are a few signs of it. Like, the script maybe isn't the best it could be. The pacing maybe isn't the best it could be. I don't know if you noticed, but there's a few occasions where Paul, particularly in a scene between Paul and Elizabeth, and I'll just switch to them for a second because I'm sure we all fancy a bit more Hazel Court in our life. Mm-hmm. There's a scene where he's talking to her in the drawing room, and she looks at the camera a couple of times, just quickly. But she looks directly in the camera twice. And I noticed when they were looking down and moving, I think I realized that they were, what's the phrase? The terminology for where they have to move? Blocking?
Blocking.
Yeah. I think they were clearly looking at where they had to move for blocking, looking at the tape on the floor and moving, yeah. So there were those slight moments of, I think, jankiness that stood out.
Man. Yeah. Excuse me a second.
No worries, COVID, man. I know. We're lucky you're with us. Lucky I'm still here. I mean, I don't know if I mentioned, guys, but little horror show. Not sleeping too well at the moment. I'm seeing 3 a.m. again. I'm gonna have to get her back on the Rod Serling episodes.
And Inrieb and Theremin Trees. Christopher Lee's performance was quite excellent. Not in the beginning. He was kind of stilted in the beginning, but I agree with Theremin Trees. The pathos of him cowering in the corner and then figuring out he can break the chains off the walls and escape. That was quite excellent.
Oh, yes. I'm really glad you said that, actually. I mean, actually, Murgoot, do you just want to talk about his portrayal of the creature and your thoughts on that?
Well, at first, it was just kind of, he was slow and stilted. I mean, he's just, you could say, yeah, it fits because he's just newly resurrected and he's learning his body. But it didn't work for me at first. And then when he's being treated like a dog, come forward, sit, stay, just the look in his eye just told it all. And then when the maid came in, that was a good physical acting. I mean, he has no words, but he does act it out well. And the makeup here, just the shaved head from where Victor did more brain surgery to fix the issue.
I mean, the way he said, I've been doing brain surgery, it's it's a dark line. It's a very dark line. And I think it's this bit that elevates it massively for me.
Yeah.
You know,
the haunted look in his face.
Yeah. The Branagh starts off basically Okay. After a little bit of like sweaty, oily, naked tussling, that seems very de rigueur in the 1990s, you get instantly a sympathetic creature who is mistreated until he becomes savage, which is in line with the novel. Whereas this one, because of the damaged brain, you get a savage creature first.
Yeah.
And then I think it's harder to get the feelings from you. But having seen him as a savage, like instantly violent creature, dangerous, for Christopher Lee to then win you over and make you feel bad for him, like he's got no words and he's buried under a heck of a lot of makeup. Admittedly, and I was a bit shady in this, but admittedly, not all of it staying on 100%. I mean, if you want to get very annoyed and nitpicky, pay attention to his neck in multiple scenes. You can sort of see where the latex ends very often. But yeah, he's buried under makeup and he manages to make this genuinely upsetting. Like, I feel awful for him in this. There's so much pathos and it really shows you his skill as a performer.
Patrick Bateman, it's Aid Skrillex. God, that's a throwback. That's a real throwback to the.
It's flipping a white male. What a callback. Was it Carl the Cuck was his friend?
Yeah. God,
What
a throwback.
What a call.
Oh, thank you for that image, Patrick.
No worries.
Oh, God.
That guy never turned up again, bless him. Let's hope he's living a good life. Yeah. Yeah, so I like this portrayal of it. It's challenging. And a good choice. He feels, I don't know, to an extent, apart from that initial attack, he doesn't seem that dangerous. Like, I think he just gets kind of confused with the blind man is poking him with sticks, you know. Blind man kind of had it coming, let's be honest.
And the grandson is kind of
Ginger.
nebulous whether something happened to him or not.
Oh, yeah. Hang on. Is this Aid Skrillex? Have we got some deets on Aid? Seriously? All right, okay. We're going to have to do some Googling on this. Bloomin' heck. Maverick with the meme knowledge.
Let's see.
Yeah. So I guess what I was trying to say is I was not a huge fan at the start. I did think you are hugely underutilizing Christopher Lee when you just slap him in this. When he looks almost like consciously like the Mummy, which I think they would make, 2 years later? Let's have a quick check. 1957. It's 2 years later. The Mummy was 2 years later. Crikey. And of course, they made a sequel to this the very next year. Bloomin' heck. So we weren't wasting time. You know, wasn't a fan of this, but then when he can turn the pathos up, it does work. It really does work, and it sells the rest of the film. Now, I should note actually whilst you're Googling that, now seems like a good time to ask chat. So, your choice for horror homework for next week, I'll throw in, there we go. Should be up there. The Mummy and Dracula. Now, The Mummy will be a bit more like this. So what I'm interested in is, with the formula, how much do they polish it up? Spoilers, it's much more noticeably Bray Studios in The Mummy. Dracula, you will get to see Christopher Lee flex his acting muscles a bit. So get your votes in on that. I think we'll probably do one or the other, because there's a few classics I need to do, and I need to take us into the sort of later vampire ones, which is going to be ridiculously thirsty. We'll do we do Vampire Lovers or Twins of Evil? We'll see. Get voting though. Get voting, and I'll see. I'm trying to see the poll. Okay, never mind.
I don't see anything about that, and I'm not diving into Kiwi Farms. Thank you very much.
Okay. Good choice. Good choice. Is that even up?
Yes.
Crikey. That surprises me. That really surprised me.
No, Josh Moon is a survivor, if anything you can say about him. He's balls to the wall survivor.
I like this. Maverick, I and my 5 alts are voting for Dracula. Let's see. How's that doing? How is that doing? Dracula is winning pretty handsomely. I will say The Mummy is an interesting one. I might recommend it to you for just a comparison with this, but Dracula, you're getting a lot more from your Christopher Lee.
The Mummy's the one where I know I've seen it, but isn't that the one where Christopher Lee like dislocated his shoulder or busted his knee going through the door because they used a real door, not a prop one?
I don't know. I don't actually know. I know from watching it, I was massively impressed by the direction on it. I felt like he'd massively, sorry, I keep saying massive. I felt he'd stepped up a lot and made it so much more, what's the word, physical, kinesthetic. Just like you feel the mummy is like much more able to just rampage. And when they shoot him, because there's no blood on screen, they can just show it in camera. And I thought it looked really good. They can use it like a dusty squib.
Yeah.
It's maybe slightly more interesting characters, but I can understand if people want to see Christopher Lee actually acting a bit.
Yeah, it was The Mummy where Christopher Lee dislocated his shoulder. It was a real door. He was supposed to pop it open, but one of the grips had accidentally slammed shut the bolt on it. And Christopher Lee was strong enough to bash open the door, but he dislocated his shoulder.
Oh, crikey.
Amazing.
Well, one of the like pre-film topics we'll have to do is we'll get you a little bit of like who are the main stars. We'll cover that, but I mean Christopher Lee is just like this. Where do you even start with him? Like such an interesting life, crikey.
Mm-hmm.
One person we should talk about a bit before we start signing off, and I'll go to this because I love this image of her. She's arriving. You can see she's brought her muff with her. She's got both hands in it still.
Mm-hmm.
Impressive. But it's cold out there. This is Hazel Court arriving. People may remember her very recently from The Mask of the Red Death.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she played a really dark role in this. But here she gets to be Elizabeth. If we're talking about some of the characteristics of Hammer, people do tend to complain that the women are a bit underwritten. How do you feel about that in the context of this film?
She's a secondary part. I mean, she comes into her own when she's exploring the lab, but for the most part, she's a secondary character. It's Krimpa's actions hinge around her later on, but I wouldn't say underwritten, but for a secondary character, she was well done in this.
Yeah, she's got a lot of presence. You know, she gets. It's sort of the thing of like, what do you expect from a film? Like, it's a two-hander really between Kemper and Frankenstein. Like, everyone else is quite a minor character. So, yeah, I know. Later they do tend. Well, hang on. John Gorris has said it perfectly. It's a movie about men in a man's world. Yes, yes. A film about the sort of pushing the forefront, and action is going to focus around men. Like, you can get more women in later. Like, the wife in The Mummy is I forget who plays her. She has a lot more to do. As you go on, sometimes you get female protagonists, but you know, don't go in expecting equality. Not on this channel. Come on. Anyway, she does great for what she's given to do for her part. As I would say, the lady playing Justine, but keep an eye out for that, and we'll evaluate how fair it is. It was something that was raised in a course on Hammer Horror that I did. Earlier in the stream, I noticed in the chat that Patrick Batman referenced Mark Gattis's History of Horror for having a nice episode on Hammer. I would second that. I'll say you can find the web. There's a university in the UK called City Lit, and they did a 2-day course on Hammer, which was really fun. So it's only about 8 hours, but I did that. I really enjoyed it. So if anyone is interested, I'd check that out if you just want a professor to talk to you about Hammer, someone who knows it a bit more from me, but I had a great time watching that. And he brought up that complaint of, well, the women are often, you know, they're not fully developed as characters. I'm like, oh, that's a very 2000s complaint, you know. Anyway, but we'll keep an eye out on it. Theremin Trees having yes, not just be aware of that then. Having said that, for the finale, I'm just conscious that we want to be efficient. Finale, I thought effective. Didn't waste much time.
Yeah.
You say it rattles through once the creature's up and about.
Mm-hmm. And I did appreciate the denial of Victor's tale by Krempa.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, we will overlook the awkwardness of they shoot, you know, once the creature's been shot in the woods, they bury him. Well, you then find out, okay, Victor's dug him up single-handedly, brought him back single-handedly, got him into the castle without anyone else seeing, and then managed to string him up single-handedly. Once you sort of get around that sort of the practicalities of that, well, we can enjoy just beautifully framed stuff like this. But yeah, the real meat of this, like the physical confrontation, it's well done. It's sort of okay. It's not as exciting as this scene where Victor sort of now weakened, now humbled, pleads to Kremper. Like, this for me is the meat of the film, and it's delicious. They've had this argument back and forth, but now Kremper, like, he knows exactly who Victor is, and he's not going to be persuaded by him. Victor has to pay the price, right?
Oh yeah, it's all of Victor's arrogance gets thrown back in his face. And it's, oh, you're mad. It's, you did all this, and I have no clue what you're talking about.
Yeah. this is what I absolutely love, and it makes this film an absolute, to me, a unique standout. So many Frankenstein films are kind of in love with Frankenstein, even if they're like, oh, he's a tragic hero. You know, he was brought down by his own creation. Oh, terrible, but he was aiming for the stars. Or Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or the very bad Victor Frankenstein from 2015, which absolutely wastes James McAvoy's talents. Both of them are just absolutely in love with Frankenstein and have this screenwriter-brained idea that, well, he's just so special and amazing and big-brained. He should be able to do anything. And so he gets away with it, you know. This film just is unironically aware that Frankenstein is the monster. He's awful. He treats people terribly. He doesn't care for society. He violates taboos. He murders people. He uses people. He betrays people. And he deserves the guillotine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just brilliant. It stands out to me so much. Like, oh my gosh, this film actually has a moral viewpoint and pushes it forward. This is great. He doesn't get to main character plot armor his way out of it. I love it. Like, it's such a complete moral journey. He's treated people terribly. He pays a price. Yeah.
There's not much to say with that. I'm just happy he got his just desserts in the end. Cushing did play a gleefully amoral character in this.
Yeah.
Oh man. Sorry, I'm kind of fading right
No worries, man. I know. You, bless you so much. You're still recovering from COVID, and I'm sleep deprived. We are going to round off. We will round off quickly. But yeah, it's a unique vision. I owe people a Frankenstein video because I've wanted to compare the moral vision of Frankenstein, and I've tried many different ways to script it. Maybe I will make it. Maybe send a little horror show away for a holiday, and I'll quickly crank it out. Anyway, Patrick Batman has sent £5. Thank you so much. Saying for the Hammer arc, Captain Kronos 1974. Horst Janssen hunts vamps with a katana. This is before Highlander and Underworld or anime like Vampire Hunter D. A fantastic suggestion. It will go. I'm very happy to cover Captain Kronos. I think I will cover it in the unusual Hammer arc. So we're going to do this one. We'll have a break, and then we'll do the slightly more out there stuff. So like Hands of the Ripper, The Nanny. I don't know. Maybe you can decide: is Captain Kronos standard Hammer, just late in the day, or is it the weirder side of Hammer? Because we got a lot.
It's right on that line.
We could do
definitely one of the more.
It's like weird stuff is. It's tough when you get late in the day. Like the weird stuff is there, like Witches, The Nanny, Phantom Ship, Hands of the Ripper, the Gorgon, the Reptile. You know, I don't know. And Theremin Trees, Devil Rides Out is going to be in standard Hammer. You may question it. You may question that one, but I think I want to cram that in just so we get some solid Christopher Lee. Anyway, I said we'd be efficient. We will round off now. We have reached the end of it. I've tried to sell you on this as a pretty efficient adaptation of Frankenstein, but has the absolute unique selling point of seeing Frankenstein for who he is, having not being corrupted, not being screenwriter brained, and thinking that being an absolute genius means you don't owe anyone being a good person. Remember, folks, remember the words of Elwood P. Dowd in Harvey. I've learned in this world you can be ever so smart or ever so kind, I prefer the second. Never miss a chance to quote Jimmy Stewart, right?
Yeah, I guess that takes it to me.
It does. Let's do our roundup. Closing thoughts and scores. Go on, Murgoot. And chat,
Well,
get your scores in.
It started rather slowly and kind of repetitively. Once the 45-minute mark hit, it sped up. It was consistent. It flowed well. Christopher Lee, even without any speaking part, did well on that. The ending was apt for Victor von Frankenstein. You talked me up from a 5. I'm now going with 7 burgers with some ketchup.
This was going to get a 5?
Yes.
Oh, no.
You talked me up to a 7.
I'll take it. I'll take that. Okay. No, that's a win. I feel like putting like a caution note, like viewers should bear in mind that Murgoot's score was affected by COVID. All right. No, I'll take that. I'll take that. I mean, we got to, this is good. It's still a little janky for Hammer. We will see it improve as we go along. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm happy with that. We've got a 9 coming in from John Goris. We've got 9.5 Frankenburgers from Theremin Trees. Let's see those scores coming in, folks. Reminder, you can see this movie for free on YouTube and on Prime. My own scores, well, hopefully I've sold it to you. It's a moral vision. It's a version of Frankenstein that could, Frankenstein's creature that could have been better. The makeup is lets Christopher Lee down, but there's a choice to still get some pathos at the end that absolutely sells it for me, that has an emotional impact that really works, and it really speaks to Christopher Lee's skill.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, he could obviously do better, and he will do better in future Hammer. But this is a competent debut. A lot more credit to Jimmy Sangster for the script and for the framing of the choice. Terence Fisher, I think, largely does a good job, but there's not too much creative stuff, so it's not standout direction. It's largely competent, but it's promising, and the choice of actors really helps. But what's going to be interesting is what Hammer can do with the same actors later. So I'm not going to score this too highly. I actually think a sort of 7.5 is about right. It's pretty good. But this is an early effort from Hammer. We're going to stick around, and I'm hoping we hit the much higher scores. Because I'll tell you, folks, I'll be watching a lot of these for the first time myself. I'm trying to come to some of these fresh. So, and look at these scores coming in. Okay, a heck of a lot of 9s. Lots of 9s. We've got a 10, and we've had a 6. So not a hit for Maverick, but a 6 is respectable. I'll take that as a win. And looking at the poll, folks, just as we round things off, we've got a... Oh, wow. How was that poll? Okay, sorry. Unsurprisingly, guys, Dracula has won with a very tasty 78%. Yes, I try and make the case. The Mummy is... Let's put it this way, folks. If you liked this one, watch The Mummy. And I think you're basically going to see this film done with more competent, confident directing, much better action, and a bit more from Christopher Lee. So watch out for that. But we will, of course, now go forward and watch Dracula from, I want to say, 1958. Let's do a quick check. It is 1958. If you're in America, you may see it as Horror of Dracula, because it had to change the titles around. There are so many Dracula movies. Even then, they had to distinguish themselves. So yes, 78%. in favor of Dracula. So we'll watch that next week, and Christopher Lee will get a lot more to do. We've also got a last-minute super chat from the NREAB. Thank you much, sending a tenner. Very appreciated. Saying Quatermass and the Pit 1967 is another non-standard Hammer film by Nigel Neal. Pride of Britain, by the way. Amazing guy. It's a genius scriptwriter in UK horror. He wrote The Woman in Black 1989 adaptation. Need a deep lore intro on Nigel Neal. Oh, I would absolutely do that. I mean, how would I not cover the guy behind Halloween 3? Season of the Witch. No, genuinely, Nigel Neal, really interesting guy. Someone Britain can be very proud of. He did so much great stuff. Absolutely. Well, we can cover him. So, folks, there we go. You've got the closing thoughts and scores. Oh, and a late score from the NRAB. 8.5, 8 out of 12 burgers patched together from some murderer's body stolen from the grave with some brain thrown in and bright red sauce. Yeah. Comfortable. I'm seeing everyone's actually a bit more positive than we are. I feel like we've underrated it, but chat, if you're enthusiastic, I'm happy. Thank you very much, guys. That's our closing thoughts and scores in for The Curse of Frankenstein, our first classic Hammer horror. You've got your... I can't speak tonight. You've got your horror homework for next week. It is Dracula. 2 weeks. Yes, we are off next week. Thank you, Murgoot. My goodness, I'd be lost without you, man. And that sleep deprived myself, right? 2 weeks. Then we're back. 1958's Dracula with the same team. And that, I believe, is everything. Thank you so much, Murgoot.
Thank you very much for having me. And thank you, chat. Yes, chat. Thank you. Fun tonight. And thank you, chat, being lively and also being generous. It is very much appreciated. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've got a lovely Friday lined up tomorrow and a fantastic weekend ahead. Plenty more coming. I won't promise anything. You may get a sort of surprise stream from me on a more recent thing, but if you see it, it's a bonus. But I can't promise it. Needing to look after a little horror show. It's a joy, but it takes up time. All right, folks, really enjoyed this one. I'm going to sign off now. Have yourselves a fantastic Friday and a fantastic weekend, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Thanks, y'all. Cheers. #Shulgang.
Wait, it's like T